Well, we are live this Thursday evening. I hope everyone has had a great week, and thank you for everybody jumping on here with us. We've been super busy the past few weeks, and tonight we just kind of wanted to host this meeting and give an update on our recent activities and just kind of talk about upcoming events. And most importantly, our convention is coming up, and we'll touch on that later. And that's going to be August 17th and 18th in Rapid City, South Dakota. So take this as your invitation to come join us. It's going to be a great year. So without further ado, we have on here with us our CAF USA President, Brett Kinsey out of South Dakota, and Vice President Eric Nelson out of Iowa, and Field Director Karina Jones out of Nebraska. So let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and comment and let us know if you have any questions. And with that, Karina.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to get right to it. Eric, let's talk about the reason why, we exist, the cattle markets, correct? So from an Iowa cattle feeders perspective, talk to us about this fat cattle market and even the feeder calf market and procurement right now.
Well, numbers are in the owners of cattle's favor right now. And at the feedlot end, if you're trying to sell slaughter cattle, and the Packers tried to muster enough strength to play hardball here a couple of weeks ago, and I sold some cattle 3 weeks ago tomorrow for $298 on a grid base, and today the bid was $302.50 for that same grid, the same grid base, which would be a couple dollars higher on a live equivalent. And so even though they've tried to back the thing up, the numbers just have made it pretty tough for them to do that. There was even a rumor, I think the JBS plant in Greeley, I think had a small fire, I think that's the right plant. There was a plant in Colorado, but the damage was small enough and it kind of dovetails with some of these Packers are trying to cut down their kill rate anyway, but it didn't even put any jitters through the market because the supplies are so tight. And on the feeder side, I just looked through, Northern's been selling cattle, about 160,000 cattle this week, and I found 5 lots that sold in the last couple days that I've had in the past. Some 625 pound steers that bring 281. Some 635 pound heifers that bring 260. And I just went back and looked back to 2014 on prices I paid for those same cattle. And roughly it's around 14, and this is just a thumbnail figure, but 14% higher on feeders now than what they maybe were bringing in August of 2014, which was kind of a watershed time when feeders got pretty high. And so that's 14% more, but fats today from last week, if you compare last week's prices to the high that I sold cattle in the spring of 2015, fats are about 10.5% higher than what they were in 2015. So, and if you look at it that way, and even on the, even though the feeder cattle prices are really strong and they're 14% above 2015, what can we buy today that is only 14% higher than what it was in 2015? And so I think we need to keep our eye on that. And yeah, it feels great to be getting these price levels, but there's still a real problem on how much is coming back to the producer, and be it the cow-calf producer or the feedlot operator.
Absolutely. Excellent point. And we know that the USDA cattle inventory reports that were released last week showed a 2% decline in beef cow numbers since 2022, and also feedlot placements since last year. So herd rebuilding is not happening. And there's no signals in sight to say when that is going to start. So we definitely have a tall hill to climb to rebuild this part of our industry. So in other recent events in RCAF, Brett, you recently went out to a meeting at the White House from South Dakota. You sat at the White House at a meeting. Let's talk about that. Who was all there and what was the discussion?
Oh, it was a flying trip, kind of short notice. The White House had personnel there, the National Economic Council, USDA. There were 16 ag organizations that were invited to attend, really wide array of ag organizations. And I guess the reason that it didn't take me long to decide to make that trip is, the House Appropriations Committee, correct me if I have this right. I've been going to go back and nail down exactly, because there's so many committees, select committees, whatever, they had voted shortly before that meeting in a party line vote. I have to add, the Republicans voted to strip funding from the enforcement of the Packers and Stockyard Act that President Biden, that's what the thrust of the meeting was to revisit the administration's executive order on competition. And, probably the most favorable part of that for me was the clear definition and enforcement of the Packers and Stockyards Act. So you take it that the week before the meeting was announced to us that vote took place to strip the funding from that effort, and then subsequently earmarked $10 million for mandatory ID of livestock just in case it becomes law. And I felt that I had no choice but to go out there and try and refocus them on the most common question that I hear from everybody, Democrat, Republican, RCAF members, other group members, is why don't we just enforce the laws on the books? It sounds so simple, but the shenanigans are starting here again. So I guess that's why I went, or my big thrust, I guess my pitch is that RCAF is pro-America, nonpartisan. None of our initiatives would end anyone's business model, but by adding competition, it would let big and small compete on virtue of merit. And, just the fact that RCAF lobbies all three branches of government, legislative, executive, and judicial. Legislatively, I wanted to push hard on the OFF Act and MCOOL. And, a lot of others spoke at length about the OFF Act. So in terms of MCOOL, I just laid out the efforts that we've made in the last 7 years. If you think it doesn't take stamina to do this, we've been at it ever since repeal, trying to get MCOOL back to allow American producers cattle that produce American beef to compete with these imports. And I told them about the petition that we had with around 400,000 signatures. I told them that we had finally gotten a bill filed, in large part thanks to some House or some state government resolutions that strongly urge some DC politicians to get this effort moving. The Morning Consult poll that shows that 86% of voters support bills like the American Beef Labeling Act to let them compete. So, that was the thrust of the legislative efforts. As far as the executive branch, I thank them for their effort on the enforcement of the Packers and Stockyards Act and competition in general. It's so interesting. In DC right now, there's so much talk about antitrust enforcement and competition, and really it's on both sides of the aisle. But anybody is reluctant to actually put some teeth into this effort. And so I think that that's where we are right now. We need to run downhill into this farm bill. And so I just, I spoke to the Packers and Stockyards Act of 1921. There it is: to assure fair competition in trade practices, to safeguard farmers and ranchers, to protect consumers, to protect members of the livestock, meat, and poultry industries from unfair, deceptive, unjustly discriminatory, and monopolistic practices. And those are the rules that we're working on right now to avoid litigation going forward, to clearly lay those out. And, that was the thrust of what I presented to them. That, and I thank them for allowing the perspective of the American cattleman. to DC, because that's kind of a new development too. We hear a lot from the beef industry, and the beef industry sat right across the table from me, Ethan Lane. I just made it clear that there were things that the beef industry and the cattle industry agree on. There are things that we vehemently disagree on, but we urge them, we thank them for hearing us today and urge them more so in the future to listen to both sides. And that's what I urge every politician, that when the beef industry brings them something, it's their job to take into account what it's going to do to the independent small businesses in their constituency in terms of the cattle industry. And I guess to wrap up the DC trip, I wrapped up my little presentation on the way to DC. I reread Dr. Robert Taylor's research paper. What was it? Harvested cattle, slaughtered markets. And he had a tremendous synopsis in there. Who controls the food system? Who do people want to control the food system? Will entry as a producer be by invitation only? Will exit from production be due to bad business practices of an individual or triggered by predatory activities of dominant corporations? Is the system fair? These are critical questions. And I just thought that was so powerful. Ultimately, that is so much of what's being thrown back and forth in DC right now. I think we're getting closer to defining the problems, but America has always had problems, but we've had the courage to face those problems and solve them. And I pray that we can still do that. But that's what's upon us at this time.
That's a great place to segue into having the courage to tackle those solutions. And so let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that being the Farm Bill situation. What solutions in the Farm Bill is RCAF drawing the line at and fighting for to make sure that we return some of these retail profits back to the independent cattle industry here in America?
Well, I think, our signature effort has to be MCOOL. Maybe not because any one of these are the most important, but because it's the simplest, most pro-America. We draw our line in the sand at sovereignty. For a nation to survive, you have to be able to allow your citizens' production to differentiate itself. And I think that to a lot of people on the outside, I'm not complaining. I love to work. I give up IQ points to everybody that surrounds me, but I love to work, and it's a good thing, because you roll into Farm Bill and RCAF, and you better have your head screwed on, because it has been busy. And I think to a lot of people on the outside, they feel like maybe, yeah, we got a Senate bill and we got a few sponsors, and that's it. But we've still been pushing, and I can't make any specific announcements, but I did get kind of permission to say that we have some exciting news coming tomorrow in terms of getting the effort of MCOOL moved into the House of Representatives. And I just think that is going to open the door to a lot of our other issues, because whether you're a beef eater or a vegan, nobody wants to be lied to. And that's what we're trying to put an end to. So that's MCOOL essentially.
So yes, we soon will have a bicameral approach to getting MCOOL into the Farm Bill. And another issue where we already do have solid footing, a bicameral effort going on, is the OFFAC, the Opportunities and Fairness in Farming Act. Do either one of you want to speak to those checkoff reforms that we are fighting for?
Eric, do you have anything to say, or you want me to?
Well, all that I was going to maybe jump in before earlier when you were, started talking about our priorities. I think of all the RCAF members that I know, the two issues that you just put out there, MCOOL and the checkoff, are kind of really the ties that bind so many of our great members together. And we have I think we're pretty solid agreement that 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 there needs to be, we've got to have MCOOL, and the terms in the OFF Act are important. There needs to be transparency, and you just go down the list. In fact, I heard on the media that's not generally favorable to RCAF today, they were talking about how, they were talking about the OFF Act and how transparency is really what we really need that. But then they said, but this bill will kill the checkoffs, which is not true. And so they've demagogued this terribly. And I'm really disappointed. And I would encourage, a bunch of our groups that would typically be pulling the other direction than what we're doing. They evidently need to have better knowledge of what some of these proposals are that RCAF's working on. And I'd encourage them to come to our convention here in August so that they can come away with better knowledge.
And it's something you just said. I want to take it and use it. You said that between MCOOL and coupled with checkoff reform, those seem to be the two issues that across the board, our CAF members come back to our directors, staff, leaders, and say, these are our hot button issues, labeling and checkoff reform. And so if any of you are watching and you find yourself in that camp of agreeing that those are your hot button issues too, well, then it's time to swell the ship. It's time to join and become a member of RCAF, or maybe you've lost track of where your membership is. Give us a call and we can check to see, if your membership is current. But it is time to swell the voice of rural America, of cattle producers who want their product fairly marketed in our own market. And also, if you're a consumer who does not want to be a part of the fraud that you are subject to at the meat counter at the grocery store, then it is time to join this group of like-minded individuals and join RCAF. So excellent point, Eric. Also on the Farm Bill front, let's talk about packers and stockyards enforcement. I know that is a hot button issue for both of you and kind of wraps up our trifecta of Farm Bill issues that we are fighting for hard.
Yeah, and obviously I didn't, I wasn't leaving that one off the list, as I'm one of the plaintiffs in our antitrust suit. So obviously market issues and competition issues are, very near and dear to my heart, as it is to a lot of RCAF members as well. And Brett read the important parts of the P&S from 1921, and I think right now that it's just what the maneuvering that's been done on the House side to try to keep any additional funding in light of all of the lawsuits that have been filed and all of the out of court settlements that have been made between producers, wholesalers, retailers, and the meatpacking industry. I think that you'd be hardly in any circle, it'd be hard pressed to find people that didn't think that there's probably additional work that needs to be done at P&S, and so obviously, we're still hopeful. So Brett, add on to that.
No, and thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, that was the third part of my very brief presentation at the White House, is legislative, executive, and judicial. I reminded them that we are the major force behind what may turn out to be one of the largest, and because of its timing, most important antitrust actions in a century. Industry after industry is facing these woes of concentration, right? And I just think that who has more to lose than the American rancher? I mean, every year I get older. Maybe it was my trip to DC. Man, you're out in the hayfield, you look around, or you're out in the pasture. Holy crap, we're lucky. I mean, really, to have that nature around you, and not just to enjoy the nature, but to keep you grounded. And so we are fortunate, and Eric and I, we were talking about this a little bit before. The American rancher might be fighting America's last stand here. When you look at the issues that we're going for, and again, we're nonpartisan, we're pro-American. I can't push that enough, that we are nonpartisan, pro-American, America first. We want competition. Competition makes us all try harder. And ultimately, our system of government was set up. One of the things that I keep stumbling back to in this, one of the most profound discoveries in my simple mind that I've come to in the last year is somehow I stumbled across Federalist 51. And in that paper, I think it was James Madison, maybe it was Hamilton or Jay, I don't remember, but they wrote, if men were angels, we would need no government. And if angels governed men, we would need no restraints on power of government. And really, if you bring it forward, a transparent competitive market is the ultimate separation of power between segments of an industry and between an industry and a consumer. And I just think that we have to push that. We are dealing with everything in America is big. There's 2 or 3 everything that build everything that we need or sell us everything that we need. It doesn't matter if it's seed companies, if it's tractors, if it's vehicles, 4 meat packers killing 85% of the cattle, whatever. We're having a bigness issue here. And the premise of bigness is what, Eric? What is the Chicago School of Economics standard of antitrust? Consumer benefit or consumer harm? Okay. And the reason we deregulated was to create efficiency. Efficiency. They always preach efficiency. And I love this antitrust stuff. It makes you think. Okay. So if the reason to get big is to be efficient, and the reason to have a corporation is to return profits to your shareholders, why are you ever going to be expected to share that efficiency with the people that are buying your product? You're going to keep that efficiency. Corporations are not benevolent. I'm not complaining. It's just a fact. They're not set up on benevolence. They're efficient for a reason. We all want to be efficient so that we can be more profitable, so that we can buy the things we need to live our lives. So I don't even know where I started with that, but and I mentioned that too out at the White House, that it really is a check on power. And I think that we really do need a more robust enforcement of checks and balances in our government, because we have too many elected officials putting power over to these bureaucracies. The elected officials blame the bureaucracy. Oh, it's USDA's fault. They should be doing this. And USDA can say, oh, well, these guys, instead of having checks and balances, it's become about plausible deniability almost, the way we've gone. And so that's why we need clear rule of law, such as MCOOL, such as the OFF Act. Maybe the question of our time, the question of this farm bill is were the checkoffs established to become lobbying funds? Because you can call me an animal rights activist all day long. I can show you issue after issue that shows that they are just not even blushing as they lobby. The other issue of our time is, do we have a right to know how our money is spent in terms of clear disclosure, in terms of auditing? We have audits now. Those audits are not compliance audits. Those audits are accounting audits. And so I think that as we go forward, we're going to get to having some good discussions. And again, there's no sense to get your dander up. It's all about a matter of perspective, and the most active participants pushing their perspective will be victorious. And so again, to Karina's point about we need members, we need people to engage, we need phone calls. This country will never be more than the cumulative effort of its citizens. We can no longer put our heads down, work hard, pay our taxes, and expect that somebody is taking care of these things for us. We see where we've gotten it. It's okay. Nobody meant to let it get away on us. but we see the result, so we have to change course, make some adjustments.
Excellent. So as you can all see watching, we've been very busy at RCAF the last few months. And so let's talk about what we've got coming up. We've got our annual convention in Rapid City, South Dakota, quickly approaching August 17th and 18th. Eric and Brett, what are you most excited about? Eric, go first.
Well, I mean, this is fun because there's going to be, so many friends that I've had for years and years, and new friends that I haven't made yet, and vendors on the trade show side that I've gotten to know the folks that are going to be there, and have the chance to thank them. And that's not even counting going to the agenda. And I mean, it's really pretty cool. I mean, there aren't that many RCAF folks that are, it's weighted pretty heavily with folks from outside of RCAF. I mean, Representative Harriet Hageman is a patriot. And I'm excited for the sheep counts, the sheep committee chair report, and then the sheep industry panel. And Bill Bullard has said for years that the sheep industry is kind of the canary in the coal mine for the cattle industry. And if a lot of people don't understand what's been going on in the sheep industry, they need to pay attention to that. And then I've been involved with the Coalition for Prosperous America, and there's a bunch of patriots at that group, and they've got one of their trade council that are going to be visiting with us about some of the things that are going on at WTO, which is going to be great. And then Tracy Hunt has been worth the price of admission at our RCAF meetings since he started talking. And there will be guys that will say that, well, you won't have anything new, and they're wrong. And I can't wait. And that's just the first day, right? And so then you go into the next day, and RCAF was fighting for property rights before the battle was even really known. And I only wish that Angus McIntosh could be with us, because he helped us really get established there. Open Markets Institute, Claire Kellaway is going to be there, a rancher from the U.S. Mexico border. Here, real life feedback for what it's like there. Dr. Thornsberry and our animal health report committee report is going to be awesome. And of course, Bill Bullard. There's only one Bill, and then our keynote speaker, Eva, and then Brett always pronounces this lady's last name for me from Holland, but going to be talking about all of the issues that have been going on with trying to control the food and really in the global war on farming. And so you wrap all that together, and it's going to be awesome.
Well, Brett, Eric didn't leave you much to talk about other than the good food, I guess.
Well, I mean, I want him to take a run at his last name.
Not. I haven't practiced enough.
I believe it's Ava Vladingerbroek. Yeah, I mean, I've got to start out right where Eric started. The thing that I look forward to the most by far is the people, getting to see all these people that we haven't seen for a year, getting to meet new people. There's a feel at that convention. I love it that we started with prayer breakfast. The woke folks can take their business elsewhere. If we want to start with a prayer, we will. And it's tremendous. In fact, I'm going to go share Max's presentation from last year from his prayer breakfast. Eric talks about property rights. I think Angel Cushing is an up and comer. I really enjoy hearing. I'm going to try to stay away from specific names because there's so many good ones. I mean, you've got Harriet Hageman. I think we have Mike Rounds coming to speak. He was one of the original co-sponsors of the MCOOL bill, American Beef Labeling Act. The antitrust update. It just goes on and on. But yeah, I guess ultimately, Tracy Hunt and I visited a lot, and we just kind of reflected on how RCAF basically was born as a pro-sovereignty organization, whether it's in response to NAFTA, in response to free trade, And then we've moved on to issues such as cool, do the American people have the right to choose where their food is from? And now if you watch any national media, you see the rise of ESG, global governance, radical green environmentalism. And I think it's really fitting that we pushed hard to get Ava to come. And I'll get to my ultimate question for her, but it's amazing that she's going to land in South Dakota, because we've had some stuff going on in South Dakota in terms of this carbon dioxide pipeline, shipping liquefied carbon dioxide across 5 states to sequester it or dump it in the ground in North Dakota. A lot of eminent domain issues going on, a lot of government, everybody looking at each other, not knowing what to do. But, 600 citizens showed up in Pierre and asked for a special session. It hasn't happened yet, but it's just so interesting to see how citizens showing up, being peaceful, being respectful, can trump a lot of money, a lot of political power, and make their voices heard. And that's what Ava, that's what drew us to her, is that she was a part of the farmers taking their tractors to town to protest the radical environmental initiatives in the Netherlands. And I guess that's special to me because my parents were active with the tractorcade in the 70s and 80s. And my dad always said that, we could have changed everything if we could have just gotten more people to stand up. And I really do think that the times that we live in, when you merge radical global environmentalism and technology, I think we're in some times that they're either going to be so exciting for our children, or they have the opportunity to be so dark. And so, yeah, we just urge people to come out, get some perspective. That's my big question for Ava. How do you get farmers and ranchers to let the friggin' hay lay for a day and go fight for their place? Because that is the question of our time. And I'm as guilty of it as anybody. But ultimately, you don't have to have a PhD. You just got to have some fire in your belly to fight for what's yours, and the rest will come along. And so that's why I invite people to come to convention. I think it has the potential to just really be an eye-opening learning experience. So.
Well, with that, we're going to let Jaden take it away and take us out of here for the evening with some convention details.
Yes, and actually, I want to kind of go a little bit away from convention for a second, because we have a lot of other events coming up in the fall also. And so we have a lot of affiliate events and meetings. I know South Dakota Stock Growers, iBand, what are the other ones, Karina? We have quite a few that have meetings in the fall. So check your state association and see if you're going to have a meeting. And we also get into our calf sale season as we get into the fall. After our convention, we usually have our first rollover pretty quickly. So if you want to donate a calf, or you're a sale barn that wants to host a fundraiser, let us know. But yeah, so lots of ways to get involved and be active that are coming up. But yes, okay, convention. That is our main focus right now. We're getting really close. It's our 24th annual convention, and our theme is American Spirit. And we're kind of biased, but I'm pretty sure that is one of the best terms to describe this event and just our membership as a whole. So if you've never been to convention, or it's been a few years, this is a year to make it out to Rapid City for sure. And so we kind of touched a little bit on our, presentation lineup, and we're incorporating a few new things. One of those being a welcome reception on Wednesday, August 16th. We have our affiliate meetings in our policy development committee meetings Wednesday afternoon. So if you want to bring policy forward on, Friday is our business session. I encourage you to come to those meetings, and that's where you sit and you talk with the other committee members of what are we going to, put in this policy? What are we going to get voted on with the rest of the membership? Very important meeting. But so then after that, we are hosting the welcome reception in the Civic Center. So you can come see us at 5 o'clock for appetizers, drinks, early registration, just a little bit of extra time to talk with some people that are usually busy during the bulk of convention. You'll also hear a quick presentation from our sponsors of this event, which is Farmers Business Network and Boehringer Ingelheim. They have generously sponsored the Wednesday reception. And so then moving into Thursday and Friday, Brett and Eric pretty much touched on a lot of our speaker topics, but you're going to get your money's worth when it comes to the presentations we have lined up. We've worked really hard to develop an agenda of, we'll hear from DC representatives, we'll hear about rural mental health, the sheep industry, updates on our lawsuits, the WTO, the GRSB. I mean, I could go on and on about just all the different presentations we have lined up. But, you know, we're excited to hear from Eva, as Brett said, and kind of told you a little bit about her. And we've issued some just information about her that you can read up on. She's going to be a really good presentation to catch. But then the last few things, we need your help getting people to convention and getting media at convention. So if you have any media connections, go ahead and tell them about our convention, send them our way, and just share that RCAF convention information far and wide. Help us get as many people and as much attention as we can. And to finish the convention talk, I want to say, if you have not gotten your hotel room, one of our hotel room blocks are completely full already. So we have one block left that still has some opening, and some kind of backup hotels as well. And also, if you plan on attending, pre-registration ends August 1st. That date is just to help us make your experience at convention more enjoyable, helps us get food, table numbers, all that good stuff. So we have all the information on convention, the agenda, speakers, hotel details on rcafconvention.com. You can register there or call the office and we'll get you all taken care of. But what else? Anything else, Eric, Brett, Karina? What else to close us out?
Well, I'm glad that you touched on how things kick off on Wednesday, and I didn't mention the affiliates, and I mentioned meeting up again with a lot of friends, and a lot of those are the members of our affiliate groups from around the country, whether it's folks from down in Colorado or Wyoming or Washington State or Iowa. I'm excited to have that time to meet with our affiliate members, Wednesday afternoon. So encourage, those folks to come, and kick everything off in the right fashion.
Yeah, energized affiliates really are the key to what we do, because they are constituents of the government officials that we try to move, and their input is so critical. Jaden mentioned the motel rooms. I think the secondary one is the Howard Johnson, right?
Yep.
And that's at rcafconvention.com. You can find information. I've stayed at the Howard Johnson's. Nice place, really close there, easy traffic. That's probably the best thing about Rapid City. It's easy traffic. It's not hard to drive. And I guess the last thing is, if you've got any fight in you, this is the run downhill to Farm Bill. For 5 years, we've heard, we'll wait until Farm Bill. We'll do that in Farm Bill. And so it's all converging now to see what we can get in there. And I just think that our Common Sense platform, we have the opportunity to get a lot done in this Farm Bill.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Continue to watch all of the RCAF social media platforms and website for up-to-date information on what we've got going on in new developments. I really encourage you to stay very close to RCAF's information that they put out, because we're going to have some good news, I think, coming very soon. So have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.